we were just catching up from this past weekend, and this thought came to my mind. One of my mentors that I think about, his name is Eben Britton. He's a former NFL player. I used to play football myself, and he became a yogi after his career. And he says that every single person who starts doing yoga steps on the mat as a broken person, whether that be physically, spiritually, or mentally. And I think there's a parallel with that and also the cold. Nobody starts doing it for fun. And I believe that you're looking deeper into something if you find yourself in the cold river, the cold tub, or the cold shower. And I'd like you to give your story of how you came about to find the cold and what that journey has been like. But let's start where it all started.
Okay, Luke. So I appreciate the question, and yes, I agree with you that in my experience so far, I've seen a lot of people come to this method broken for sure. And for me, I was, I had a few years back in 2012, I went through a divorce finally, and I, was struggling to, I was graduating college. I had 2 kids. I was leaving my husband, looking for a job, finishing college. And all at the same time, like, my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and I had to do so much. I couldn't really feel those emotions at that time. My body went into this fight or flight to just do and cope and take care of my children. And so it was very difficult, but my body knew what to do. My mind had to just do things. And then it was about a year later after that, the next year is when, things were in place, but then that's when things kind of fell apart. Like, I started actually going to some yoga and learning more about coming back to my true self again after being in a divorce, which after being in a marriage that didn't really support me as who I was, my authentic human self. So, I, going to yoga started to open up and bring me back to that. And then at that point is when all of those emotions came out again. It was like I was safe to kind of process that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really difficult to process it and for it to come out. And I ended up kind of like, sometimes spiritual awakenings come, they're called like breaking open, spiritual broken. You break open and it's really scary at times, and you cry a lot and you get depressed, but you have to kind of break a part of you open to get deeper. And that's what happened to me. It was like I had one of these spiritual kind of awakenings that brought me deeper into myself, but it was really difficult because I also went through really deep depression because I didn't feel a lot of support. I was in a new territory in my life, new people, new situations. And, I always had my family for support, but it was just me and my kids now. And I really struggled when my daughter would go to her dad's on Sundays. I had never had my kids leave me like that before. And so I remember just being, Northeast Ohio, we have these long winters. And I remember just being so depressed. I'd be staring out at Lake Erie. I lived in this little town called Fairport Harbor, and I'd be staring out to the frozen lake. And just imagining myself walking out there till I just disappear, and die. That's how I felt. Like, even like my kids couldn't kick me out of this depression. It was really bad. But something in me at that point knew enough about, like, I was trying to learn more about this spiritual part of me now, and working with this higher power and working with this stuff, and these chakras and this energy through my body, and what all this meant that I was learning through yoga. And I started to get into Reiki practice, which I had done a little bit earlier in my life in my 20s. And I kind of came back, like I was saying, I came back to myself again after my divorce, my authentic self, I believe. And so I was kind of understanding about how energy works in the body. And when you're depressed, your energy, your core thriving for life is dwindling down. You don't have that. You feel like you have no energy. You feel just, what's the point? What's the use of anything? I have no passion. I have no drive. That's exactly how I felt. And So something inside me said, I need this spark inside my gut, my core chakra, this like energy, this fight, this fire, light a fire under you to like get motivated. I need this fire to be relit in me again.
Yeah.
Because I think that was really blown out with all the like blows that came at, my divorce, losing my house, losing my dog, all this stuff, losing my father, who was very, very important in my life. Like I have this tattoo to remember him on me, which we can, talk about later or whatever. I'd like to share that some about my dad because he's a really important part of my life.
Definitely.
And so all of that, was, took away this drive from me, and but I knew that somehow I needed to get that fire back in me. And, part of the Wim Hof method is called inner fire. And so being like an artist, I would witness like how my body was outside and just observe. I observed a lot around me. And I remember like thinking about how and watching kids play and being outside, and how just naturally our bodies start to jump around and move, and our breath changes, and we start to, move our body, and our breathing is like, this kind of stuff. So then I was like, okay, I need this external force, which is cold, to kick up the internal heat in my body. Somehow this clicked in me, and I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to find cold to make the inside furnace kick in, which causes heat in my body, and which will cause me to want to like live again and thrive again and go out there and do new things again, want to be a part of the world again. And so I had met some people at the yoga room or at the yoga studio that had done cold conditioning. This guy would come and he would wear shoes in the wintertime, and he was just like was talking about like this different types of Buddhism where people do cold stuff, like Tumo Buddhism, where they put like a cold rag or a ice rag or something on their head, and they have to just try to like melt it with their body heat. So he would talk about that stuff, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So I wanted to seek out these people that are doing this stuff. So I looked on Facebook, and I found some people who are doing this, and I messaged them and I said, hey, I really think that I need to do this practice, of jumping in the river, being in the cold in the wintertime for my life. I'm like, do I need to take weeks and weeks of cold showers to prepare for this? And the guy was like, pretty much, if you're healthy, you just can jump in the river with us. We're doing this, next weekend, or it was the next day, something like that. And he told me where they were meeting, and it was this place that I go to all the time in the summertime that is like my connection. It's the Chagrin River in North Chagrin Metro Park, so I'm really connected there. That's where I always find my peace. That's where I go in any times of distress in my life, is I go to nature, and especially that place. I've been going there for over 20 years since I was a teenager. Then I moved to Willoughby. So I was like, this is just, my higher power. I'm getting these breadcrumbs, I call them, these little pieces to get back to health and wellness and like happiness in my life. My higher power is guiding me through these little signs like, yeah, that place. This is safe. This is where you need to go. It's the same place. So I went there the next day, and I had no cold experience. I didn't know anything about this. The best advice he told me, he said that when you go in the water, and I watched everyone do this, this go in first before me. And I also had been doing these sweat lodges ahead of time, like not ahead of time before this, but years before that. Every Sunday I would do a sweat lodge.
Yeah. And
so I kind of knew my body also, that like my body could handle extreme temperatures. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't that afraid of the cold at that point. So, but I did go to the cold searching, to be relieved from pain and depression. And he said, what happens is when you go into that cold water, your body's going to have a natural reflex to gasp, like, it's just something that happens to you. And when that happens, you're going to have to just gain control of your breath and calm yourself down, and you'll be okay. And so that's what I did. I went to the river. I watched everyone do this. And then it was my turn, and I went in, and that happened to me. And I coughed and I choked, and then I put my hands on my face, and I just came to this place. It was just so beautiful, where I just felt so much peace and so much contentment. And plus it being in nature where I love and I feel connected, I just like in that moment, I was like, this is what I need. I found it, you know? So it was just, there was nothing in my brain anymore about the depression, about bills, about work, all that stuff that, you know, we worry about all day in our brain. That was just gone. You know, I was just in this moment of just peace, you know, no chaos around me. And so I went back. They met every week, every Sunday, and they still do. And so I went back there every Sunday, and that also helped me build community, which helped me support me. Like every Sunday I would go and I'd go to the river. I would kind of be cleansing for me, my mind, body, and spirit. And then we would meet for like soup or something like that, or afterwards, you know, to warm up. So we would chat. So I made some new friends and something to kind of fill the time and to get through those difficult times in my life. So that's really what led me in my experience to the cold, how I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful story. And I'm so intrigued by your mindset to, you know, when something goes wrong in your life, not turning to bad habits or bad tendencies. I think it's easy to look for the short-term fix, the short-term dopamine rush that you need in those certain times, and rather looking to your core, like you said, the inner fire that you knew was missing, which was the core issue of your depression, and being able to, you know, look for something external that would eventually lead to the internal change, which is what you really needed, rather than, you know, an antidepressant medication or something like that. And I'm so fascinated with your story. I can't wait to dissect more of your mindset and where this comes from. So you're a Wim Hof instructor, certified instructor. You've been trained by him personally. You just came back from Poland, is that correct?
Yep, I just came back from Poland.
Yeah, so Kamalika just came back from Poland. I was lucky enough to do one of her advanced workshops a couple weeks ago. I had done her beginner's workshop where she takes you through the Wim Hof method. If you haven't heard of it yet, it is, I would look up a 10-minute YouTube video on it, or if you're in the Cleveland area, Kamalika is running classes, and we'll give the information at the end. But also, if you just want to test it out, there's a 10-minute YouTube video, and he also has an app that is super powerful, and you can learn the method through that. But she is a master in the Wim Hof method. She's been training with him and different trainers across the globe, really, and it's been super cool for her to bring back that information and be able to relay it to groups of people around us. So I'd like you to get into your experience in Poland, I guess the first time maybe. Maybe take us through the first time and what made you want to go and become a Wim Hof instructor.
Okay, so my training was actually all done in the U.S. So this last time going to Poland was my first time going to Poland.
Okay.
A lot of people do their training in Poland, and originally I thought that I was going to do that too. But then when I messaged the academy about it, they said that they suggested us in the U.S. do it in the U.S. because you would meet other people, other teachers here, and connect better there on that level. So they were bringing it to the U.S. then in person. I don't think that they are now, but I'm not 100% sure because I'm kind of out of that part. But yeah, so this was the first time in Poland for me. But so my training started in the U.S. and so my story kind of picks up from there. Was like, so yeah, I'm jumping in the river every week, doing cold conditioning, but I'm still not doing Wim Hof method.
Okay.
I'm just doing the cold part. And then, a few years later, I got diagnosed with the brain cancer. And then someone in the group showed me the YouTube video of Wim in Amsterdam.
And what year were you diagnosed?
That was in 2014.
Okay.
So I started the cold conditioning in 2013. Was still doing all this through my cancer, jumping in the river after, recovering from brain surgery and chemotherapy. It helped me. That whole support continued to help me through that too. So So yeah, it was like during that time of chemotherapy and recovering, someone introduced me to the Wim Hof method. They sent me the video and then taught me the breathing. And so at that point, I still didn't pick it up completely. I was like, oh, it's nice. I feel good, but it was like, you have to kind of do it as a daily practice. And I really didn't have the motivation at that point yet. Mm-hmm. And so then then after about a year later, we, as a group of us that kept doing the cold conditioning, we ended up buying the video course off of the website, the Wim Hof website. And we all would take turns going, like, after the plunges, after we would go in the river, we'd go to someone's house and we would watch the videos together and do the exercises. So I started to really learn the Wim Hof method. And then I knew about the instructor's course, so I started just shoving money away to get my training because I kind of had this as now, things changed a lot in my life and where my career was, and having cancer, it was like I needed something different in my life, for work. And so I really thought that this is what I wanted to do. And then I went to a workshop that was done by Wim Hof in New York City, and that just blew my mind. It was just like, he was just amazing to see him in person, and his attitude and his lively and being so alive, and all of that was just ecstatic and just, so compelling and I saw all these teachers with these like Wim Hof instructor shirts on, and it made me so excited. And like, I had been doing the breath work and I thought I was doing it right, but when I got to an actual workshop, I noticed that there was something slightly different that I wasn't doing correctly. And that's why I always tell people, come to a workshop. You can do it off of YouTube, but sometimes there's some little tweaking that you might really need to get through a teacher. And so I got that tweaking, and then I really started to like feel the benefits of the Wim Hof method, the breathing, the cold conditioning, and the mindset all together, And so I saw all these teachers, so I applied for the academy to be an instructor. And so then I got accepted. They wanted at least 2 years of teaching experience. So my background in art education and teaching actually came in handy, because I kind of stopped doing that at that point in my life. And so that came in handy to be able to get accepted into the academy. And I went for my first training out in LA. And Wim was there. And I, right before, it was crazy because right before I went out there, and like I had said before, I was considering whether I go to Poland or not. So then I was like, no, I'm doing the U.S. So then the training was in LA. This was like, I'm 40 years old, my first time ever flying by myself, going anywhere by myself, because I always had kids. I was a mom at 19, so I always had a child or a partner with me. So here I am on this big adventure for the first time out to California by myself. And right before this workshop, I had an MRI, and they told me that there could be cancer growing back in my brain after 5 years. And so I was kind of devastated, but they didn't say for sure that it was there. So they said that we're going to wait a few months. So here I'm waiting a few months now. I'm flying out by myself to LA. And for this training, I'm so excited about this, but I also have this hanging over my head and this fear, and like what's going to happen, with this, my body, my brain, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to be a teacher? This is what I want in my life now. This is what I'm passionate about and my desire. And so I get out there, we start the training, and, Wim comes out there and supports us, and is like so motivating, and it's just so exciting, and to be out in California. And, we, and the two instructors that were there helping us and teaching us were the two teachers that I saw in New York City with Wim. So I was super excited to see them again, because they're wonderful teachers. And so then where was I at? So then, they tell us, okay, here's all this information. So we did some practice like stuff and learning about the Wim Hof method and how to teach the Wim Hof method and what you're supposed to do. And so they said, and they sent us all these packets and all this literature to read, things to write, and then write essays and things to study, like all these like scientific like literature and stuff like that, and about the method. And so then I have that to work on. I get back to Cleveland, and I have an MRI, and they said, okay, indeed, your cancer is growing back slightly, and we want you to do radiation and chemotherapy now. And here I am. I'm so excited to like, I have August is when I have to go back for my master training and get my certification and take these tests. So I have a few months. This was like May or the end of March, maybe. I think it was the end of March. No. It was like May or May. The end of May is when we did the training in California.
Okay.
And then I had till the end of August to do my master class. So we had all this time to like do this studying and prepare for this. And here I am, my brain's getting radiated and I'm going through chemotherapy. And what am I going to do? I'm like, do I even do this? You know, at this point, I don't know what to do. And I kept like praying on it. I kept messaging like the teachers. I said, this is what's happening. You know, I don't know if I can pass these tests, you know, but I kept plugging along through it all. And I like lived the Wim Hof method. I lived it by every morning before work. I had to do radiation at 7 a.m. And I would get there, I had to take my chemotherapy pill, and then I would take that, and then I would get to radiation. And then after that, I would do my Wim Hof breathing. I would do some yoga. I would do some meditation. They had a little like meditation hall in the Cleveland Clinic, and in the morning there was no one there, so I had it to myself. So I would do my practice every morning, and I could see the difference in my body. Like my radiation burns on my head were less than most people, because of the inflammation that the Wim Hof method does. And my white blood count was stable because it also influences your white blood count. So through all that, I could see the science behind this actually in my own body. So I was even more passionate about teaching this and getting this, you know, certification to bringing it to people because it works, you know. And I mean, everyone's biology is a little bit different, so I can't say 100% that what worked for me is going to work for you, but in general, you know, like, so yeah. Okay. And so then like a week after, so I finished radiation, a week before I had to fly out, I decided to just buy my ticket anyways. And, the last minute. So I finished my radiation a week before I had to fly out. And as soon as I finished, because at this point, at the end of radiation and chemotherapy, I could barely walk my dog, let alone climb a mountain. I was going to have to hike a mountain out in Washington State and do all this stuff. Like it just zaps you, you know, completely. Your body, your mind, is foggy when you go through this stuff. So I could barely even walk my dog. I was like, people had to cook for me, all this stuff. And that week afterwards, it was like every day I started to feel a little bit better. Every day I started to walk a little further and like started hiking up hills around the metro parks to try to just get my strength back, you know. Every day I got a little bit of myself back again. And I made it out there. You know, I had a bald head. You know, I was joking about like, because I was so like embarrassed. I'm like, I have a bald head. I'm going to be like Mr. Clean, the woman version of Mr. Clean. So like we had to do a presentation out there about like as if we were a teacher. And so I started off my presentation like, I bet you've never seen like a woman Mr. Clean. Here I am, you know, like trying to bring some like humor to the situation because it was just so like, you know, it was the first time I lost my hair and it was hard to deal with that, you know, so that came into the whole situation. But you know what? I passed the test. I got through the mountain because it also was the community there that helped me get through it. I mean, I literally had one person in front of me and one person behind me, like tied to me to get me up the mountain, you know, so I wouldn't fall because it was so hard for me to get up there. And so it was a lot. And that was my training here in the U.S. was getting tested there in Washington State in the Northern Cascade Mountains, a lot of the hiking there and swimming in the cold glacier waters and having to present and all of that under those conditions. But it was like I passed because like I lived it. And that's what I had to like really rely on was that I knew this practice because it worked for me and I lived it. And so that's kind of how I got through that. And from there it was like came back home. Wim Hof did another big event in LA. I flew back there and I was one of those people with the t-shirt on, you know, newly out of the academy and was able to volunteer and help other people at that workshop. And I was so ecstatic. We hung out at Wim's Airbnb with him and his daughter, and just had so much fun. Had a little dance party, and it was so much fun to be a part of this community, to be a part of the Wim Hof community. It's just so wonderful to be a part of that. And I love it. And that's how it was in this Poland for me also this last time. To be a part of this community is just amazing. And yeah.
Wow, that is such a deep and powerful story. And you keep on coming back to the point of community. I think it's so important. And people get lost. Like, I'm recently graduated from college, and it seems like my whole life there's always been a community like made for me through school or something. It's kind of been easy. You're always around people. You're able to find your group. But now I'd say with my first year in like the real world, you kind of have to go out and find your community. And I think a lot of people struggle with that because you can get into that same the same motion of life where you're just going to work, coming home, doing your own thing. And us as humans need to have that human connection. I mean, I can see your face light up. I can see that your life has become so much better through these different communities. Like you said, you keep on coming back to that same point of like when you went to the river and it was about the community and the people there. You were able to see people go through it. And I think that's such an important aspect of life that is often overlooked. And
I 100% agree with you with that. I just was saying this to this group of guys that I was working with today was, community is so important in us as human beings. It's in our biology. We are communal people and we don't live like that really anymore.
Yeah.
But it's in our biology to like want to need that and to thrive on that. And we really produce better at anything when we have peer support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most definitely. Wow. Yeah, I'd love for you to get into the Poland experience that you just went on. And yeah, tell me about it, because I heard a little bit about it at our workshop, but I want you to get into the whole experience. It seems like very powerful.
Yeah, I will. So once again, it was like, I a few years, I had.
And maybe you could start with why you decided to go back to Poland, because you're already a Wim Hof certified trainer. So what is the initial reason to go back, and was it another training or a different workshop?
So I had like last year I applied to get like to a level 2 training.
Okay.
That's when the teacher can now do weekend events or do advanced workshops. So a level 1 teacher, you only can do certain things through the Wim Hof Academy and offer those classes and teach that method. And so then I trained to do a level 2. So I got that last year. And so with that, then I could do weekend events, week-long advanced workshops, along with the other stuff that I do. So this was just like another way of learning how to do week-long workshops, like expeditions. This was a winter expedition. So like now, next winter I can host my own here. I can find a place and I can do that. So for me, it was learning, and it was having the opportunity to finally go to Poland and, see what it's like climbing the mountain there. And so that was a big reason why I wanted to do that. And I had, every year I had since I got my level 2 last year, they send out every year, asking for volunteers. And so then this year I got picked because of all the reviews on my website, on my Wim Hof profile. Mm-hmm. People leave reviews after workshops, and they said that they were watching me and they saw that I, put on great workshops, and I'm continuing to put them out, and that people are really getting things from them. So then they accepted me. And so that was super excited, because I wanted to be a part of this at a deeper level and to really be out in Poland, where it originated and where people do this, and giving it more worldwide, So I got accepted, and I had in the last spring, I had went through another like round of gamma knife radiation and chemotherapy. So I had still been struggling, recovering from all the side effects of this new chemotherapy that they put me on. And so I was going through that, and my dream with this has always been to like climb that mountain. I always had heard about it with Wim and everything. So all through my cancer, I've been kind of like, I need to train. I need to keep my body healthy because one day I want to climb that mountain. That's my goal. And so then I got accepted to get there, and I'm even like pushed even further. So I'm home. I'm like, I want to prepare for this. I'm trying to train as much as I can to get my body back in shape. I'm 44 years old now. I've gone through several rounds of chemotherapy. It's been hard on my body to maintain, good health and keep my muscle and stamina and all of that up, and I'm like, I have to do this. I have to do this. So it's keeping me strong, to do this, and that's kind of how I've gotten through a lot of things that I've set goals for myself to keep me moving, through living with cancer. And, so this was another big goal for me to get through a lot of this like cancer stuff is like, that's why I also wanted to do the Poland thing was because it gives me that goal, that vision to like thrive every morning when I wake up, to thrive through the adversities in my life. Mm-hmm. And, so I got accepted, started training, got my list, got my stuff, and I'm still kind of like, all right, how am I going to do this? This is big. This is a lot, I get out there and it's just the people that I've met, out there was just amazing. Everyone from all over the world, people, that signed up for this, 300 people. We start to build a community on the WhatsApp and start to get to know each other. I don't know anyone who from around here that's going. So here, once again, I'm on this adventure by myself out across. I've been to Europe twice, over to France, but never been to Poland. And so this was another big adventure for me to go by myself and, testing myself again, testing the limits of my, own fears and stuff like that. And, so everyone who though signed up for this workshop, this winter expedition had to speak English. So that was a benefit. So, and the instructors too. So, but I met people from all over the world, and there was 300 people there. There were 2 teachers per group. There was 10 groups, and each day we had a discussion about different breath work. We learned different breath work. We taught them different breath work. We had Q&As with Wim Hof. We did breathing sessions with Wim Hof. We hiked up Mount Schnitzke, and we jumped in this waterfall also. And so I was the teacher supporting people. There was a main teacher, but this time I had signed up to be like the sidekick. I wasn't confident or had enough experience yet with being the main teacher. I mean, I think that I could now after this experience. That was another thing reason why I wanted to go was because I could just learn more, and eventually I could be the main teacher in one of these winter expeditions. And so then I learned a lot from the main teacher who was from Canada that I was working with. And I just different breath work and just different ways. Every instructor has the ability to kind of teach and tweak their own classes the way they want to. So he taught things a little different than I do. And but it was just great to learn that and meet all these other teachers there, instructors, and really connected and witnessing the people transform in 5 days. Wow. It was beautiful. And that mountain was difficult. I didn't know it was like a 3-hour incline in about a foot of snow. So the snow came down, that day. So we were the first people trekking in that snow. So it was deep snow, and it was like nonstop up 3 hours. Wow. Because if you stopped, the people in their swimsuits would get cold.
So you were hiking and only your swim.
I wasn't, because I was one of the teachers, but the participants were. So it was my job to get them up safely. Everything for me was like, since I was the teacher, I didn't get to experience that. And right. The thing, I mean, I experienced it with my winter coat on, but I've done cold hikes here, so for me, it wasn't like about that. I mean, I would have loved to like hike it in my swimsuit because I never got to do that, but I was happy to be supporting people there and teaching them how to do this. Mm-hmm. And it just warms my heart to teach. I love it. And I love seeing the transition in people. And when I teach, that's what I'm really passionate about. That's
amazing. What is the main transition? You've coached a lot of people mm-hmm. through these clinics mm-hmm. and different workshops. What is some of the most consistent feedback, or what is the best feedback that you've received from someone that has an incredible experience, which is the vast majority of people who do this and are consciously breathing and listening to what you have to say. It's a truly life-changing experience, and I can say that from personal experience now. And what are those things that people say to you that make you feel good, but that also you realize like, wow, this is changing people's lives?
Yeah, probably the ice bath is a big thing. When I see people say, oh, I'll never do that, and they're terrified of that. And some people I've seen come to the ice bath and cry, like almost have a panic attack. And I can coach them through that, bringing them down from that edge of fear. And then they sit through it, and they're like, oh, I'll only be in for a second. And then they end up staying in for the 2 minutes. And to see people transform that way, to push through, they're at their edge of the most fearful thing that they're experiencing in that moment is the most fearful thing for them. To push through that, and for me to coach them through that, just brings me so much. To see them walk through major fear, which then can be transformed into other areas of your life. And that's like what I've seen, or like people saying that you helped me through my mourning of a passing of my wife. That was really hard. Like, I have this WhatsApp group, the accountability group that we connect on every morning. And so I help people stay consistent to their breath work. And there was this one guy who lost his wife. I knew his wife too. And he said, every morning when I do the breath work, it keeps me to get up and put my feet on the ground and go and start my day. And it helps me get through my grief. And that is really important to me to hear that I'm helping someone get through their grief, get through their depression. I'm supporting someone right now, this other woman who's just left her husband. She's going through some major depression. And she says to me, you know what? You there and supporting me through this breath work and showing up at the river and creating this space for me is helping me get through this deep, deep depression in my life and this major transition in my life. And when I was in Poland, I saw people say that they hadn't cried in 5 years, these guys, like over 5 years, and they were crying like babies, and they were just releasing, and it was a safe place to release, to see people really come to their emotions and to release all this stuff that they needed to let go of, that they'd never felt safe to do that.
Yeah. Right after the advanced workshop, breath work, I would have guessed when you started to wake us up, I would have guessed that we probably had done 10 minutes of breath work with maybe like a 15-minute meditation. And you informed us that we had done 45 minutes of breath work. And like a 30-minute meditation, like an hour and 15 minutes in total. And I had thought that I was laying down doing this for 20 to 25 minutes. So I was completely out of my own body. I would call it an out-of-body experience, and completely lost in my own thoughts and emotions throughout that time. And when you started to wake us up, first of all, I was confused because I was just in a completely different space. Still trying to dissect where I went and what I felt during that time. But when I stood up, and you try to get the story out of us right away because it's fresh in our mind, and it's easy, like it's sort of like waking up from a dream where you remember it right away, but then you go to the bathroom and you come back and you're like, well, I just remembered it, but now I forget everything. So I think that's why you try to get it out of us right away. And I remember just sitting there. I couldn't put it into words, but I did start breaking down and crying. It wasn't a very obvious cry, but tears started to flow out of me, and I didn't know why I was crying. I'm starting to think, and everyone in my mind, like my family and my loved ones, I was just thinking about them and how much joy they bring me, actually forced me into a state of crying, which I've never been moved by something that much and felt that level of emotion in terms of just simply thinking about my loved ones. Like I would have done anything in that moment just to, give my mom a hug or my girlfriend a hug. And it was such a beautiful experience that is difficult to explain to someone who hasn't done it. you know, that level of emotion, to be forced to tears through something as what seems as simple as breath work. And it really is, like, people say that breath is life. And I do believe that if you're able to look deeper into what the breath is and what it is able to do, it can bring you that meaning of life, which is really, you know, these deep connections that we have been talking about, and the ability to feel those connections. If that's really one of the cores of life, you want to be able to feel those connections on such a deep level.
Yeah, definitely.
It's was such a cool experience, and like you said, it is definitely a different experience when guided by someone like you. I would definitely recommend, if anyone is listening, going to a beginner's workshop, because I had done the Wim Hof method spontaneously for probably the last 4 years. Like one I would do, like, you know, a couple weeks here, a couple weeks there, I would get into it. And I've always felt the benefits. I used to actually invite my college roommates into my room, and we would turn the lights off and do like 10 minutes of Wim Hof, and like everyone would be high on life afterwards. Like, we should do this all the time.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's such a rush of just joy once you're able to get through the breath holds, and whatever is rushing through your veins is so it's so invigorating and lively. And I would recommend going to a workshop, strictly because you learn what it means. Like, somebody said something in the last workshop to, like, breathe back, or breathe down, or breathe back rather than breathe down.
Like that your nasal passages actually go back into your head straight, back into versus your head. Like up. Like when I was breathing, I was trying to, like, lift everything up, but really when I was able to breathe back, I was able to visualize that circular motion of what has always been talked about, and that simply cleared up a lot of different things. So, wow, this has been a powerful conversation so far. I want to get into what was going on in my body. So I was trying to explain to Kamalika, and she saw it as she was guiding me through this breath work, that and we don't want to get into the specifics of anything. It's very complicated. The biology of the human body is very difficult to understand at points in time, but my body was locking up during, especially like at my elbows and my hands, was locking up during the breath work, during the advanced session. Do you know what that could be in my body? And is that something that you see regularly? Sometimes not normally with the regular Wim Hof breathing, which is the one that has 3 parts, with the active breathing, the breath hold, and the recovery breath. That's the basic Wim Hof breathing that you learn. Not that much with that one. Sometimes people who are really sensitive to breath work will get some of that tetany, that tightening or tingling around the mouth, in the hands, stuff like that, or on the face, but normally not. It's usually during the power breathing, when you're breathing a lot faster and more forceful, and you don't have many breath holds during that, is when you start to get those sensations. Okay. Which can be really scary if you don't know what it is. My first time when it happened to me, it was when I was in my training, and I had, thought that I was going to have a seizure, because once I had a seizure, finding that I had the brain cancer, so I thought that was happening to me. But then, like, the instructor just told me to just slow down my breathing, and I did that, and it went away. So it's kind of can be scary, but there's nothing wrong with it. You're not going to be hurt, and everyone just goes back to kind of normal. But, like, as a teacher, we're trained to see these things and to know when anyone could possibly be in a state of danger. That's why I'm also, like, always walking around making sure everyone looks safe and all of that stuff. So, yeah. Yeah.
I want to go back and talk a little bit more, as long as you feel comfortable, with your cancer story. And obviously you went the traditional route of chemotherapy, which was obviously needed. And I want you to explain in more detail what these different healing modalities outside of the hospital, and what you were able to feel from doing these different things? Because I could only imagine, from someone who has, I've never really had anyone close to me, at least at a younger age, deal with cancer. And I could only imagine how drained, just getting everything wiped out of your body through chemotherapy. What was the Wim Hof method, breathing, and the cold, and whatever else you were doing during those times, what was it able to bring you in a time where I could only imagine how drained and tired you felt?
Yeah, it was really difficult, especially, I'm more of a natural person too. And so when I had no symptoms of this brain cancer, it was like one of those crazy things that you read in the news or whatever, that it was like, I had a seizure one day. I thought I was totally healthy, and I wake up, they took me to the ER and they did a test, and they saw that I had a massive lesion in my brain, which was the growth. And so then days later, I was like in for my very first surgery ever, having a craniotomy. My brain, the tumor that was the size of like a softball almost in my right frontal lobe, had to be cut out. So there was like no options at that point. It was just causing me to have severe swelling in my brain, and it needed to come out no matter what it was. So I didn't really have any natural options at that point. It was so, detrimental to my health. I could have died at that point, and I didn't even know that I was living with this until my brain literally kind of like exploded in a weird way. So like I didn't have much options, and then it was like, and at that time, I was also like, they put me on a lot of anti-seizure medication. So it was really hard to kind of make a lot of decisions. And they're having you make decisions when you're still kind of after surgery and recovering. So I had a lot of family support, which was really helpful to help me get through that. But, and community, like the people that I had met and was learning with at my yoga studio. I was doing Reiki. I became, during that time, I became a Reiki master. So I dove into that. And like I said, like the movement. So like the Reiki, for instance, would help me. Doing that would help me just have a better mindset. I would bring that energy, that positive energy, to my body and to my brain for my healing. And I knew at that point that I didn't want to, like a lot of people say, I'm going to fight this cancer. I'm going to kick its ass. I'm going to do this. And I want to be like, all this anger towards it. And like, for me, I wanted to love it. I wanted to love it into healing, because it's still a part of my body. It's still a part of me, even though it's a mutated part of me. At that point, I wanted to love it away, accept it and love it away into healing. So I tried, every time I would go through treatments, I would put that loving energy into my brain. I would see it being healed. I would see my body being healed. And I started doing the Wim Hof and all of that stuff. And it was just, those I still do for my health. What it does for me is it has helped me like increase my white blood count. When there was different times I was on chemotherapy and my white blood count went low and I had to stop taking the medication, I would do some extra rounds of breathing and I would go back and get tested again, and it would be up so I could take the medication again. So that and the ice bathing and all of that, it boosted my immune system. It kept me strong. I saw that. I felt more strength and power inside myself when I did all of these things, like the determination and strength in me to keep moving forward. I felt like I had a little bit of control over my life, and that was the biggest thing. Was when I was shown that video, first introduction to Wim Hof. In that video, one of Wim's friends had cancer, and he said, I'm doing the Wim Hof method for my cancer to hopefully heal me. He's like, I don't know if it's going to save me. I don't know. But you know what? It makes me feel like I have a little more control over my life and my body when I'm doing the Wim Hof method. And right there was what stuck to me, right there. I was like, that's how I feel. I feel powerless in my body, over my body, because of the cancer. And when I do the Wim Hof method, when I do these other things that I do, I changed my diet a little bit. Actually a lot. I changed my diet. I did the Reiki, I did the movement, I did the meditation, I did the breathing, I did the cold, all those extra things. some different supplements, I felt like I had a little more control over my body when I did that stuff. So, and that's the big thing, is when people have chronic illnesses, they feel powerless over their body, and that causes depression and stuff like that, or want to give up. And then the medication and the other stuff will add to the depression, because then you're tired, you're fatigued, and you just don't have any drive to continue. So it's helped me through, it's not, not sink into that deep depression. I mean, there's times where it's like gotten really, really hard, and I've wanted to give up for sure. And I've gotten really depressed, and I've wanted to just, especially when I was first diagnosed, I just wanted to run away from it all. I was like, I just want to get my backpack and go out, somewhere and not deal with this. I don't want to deal with this at all. I don't want to go through chemotherapy. It was terrifying, but it was the best option for me to live longer, was doing that, and I had kids that were young still, or just, even if they were older, I would want to be here for my kids. So, and I love life.
Yeah. So from someone who was once looking out at Lake Erie, wanting to just run across the water and disappear, to now saying that you love life.
Yes.
What would you tell to someone who is now looking out into the abyss with no drive, in a deep, dark depression that seems like they're standing at the bottom of an enormous mountain, and every time they take a step up, they just fall right back to the bottom, and there's no sight of the top of the mountain or the light at the end of the tunnel, whatever you want to call it? What would your advice be?
I would say, oh my gosh, don't give up. Don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens. There's so many possibilities. I've known people that committed suicide, it happens, get engulfed in that depression. Feelings are temporary. Feelings are temporary. No matter what you're feeling, it will pass. I will tell people that. And, I'll hold your hand until it passes. Stay on the phone with me until it passes, that feeling. And keep calling me until that feeling passes. I'm going to help you get help. That's what I would say to someone. And that, life isn't perfect. It's a pendulum of ups and downs. You're always going to have bad days or feel crappy, but you also have these wonderful, beautiful days. If I erased all of the bad things in my life, erased the cancer, then I'd be erasing all these beautiful things that I experienced. This trip to Poland, these beautiful experiences I've had with other human beings, and teaching them and seeing them go through these processes that just light up my heart. I would be erasing all of those things, and those are really moments that I love about my life and about life. Is those moments I'd be erasing all that stuff, and I don't ever want to erase that. So I accept my cancer, and I accept this pain along with the beauty. That's just life, and that's this human experience. Really, that's what it is.
So accepting life for what it is a super important part of going through that.
Yes.
And
in community, helping, getting help through the tough times, I think, and me, it's really important to make sure that I can help provide that for people. If they need that, that's important to me.
Yeah.
I think that we all need that. That's the best way to kind of get through things, or seeking out a higher power of some sort, which can be, your dog, can be, nature, it can be a friend, whatever it is, Yeah.
You mentioned your dad earlier and the tattoo. I'd love to hear about his impact on your life, and why you still have him tattooed on your arm today, and how was able to impact your life in such an incredible way.
So my dad was a psychiatrist. He also was involved in my name is a little bit different. It's Sanskrit, and that is an old Arut language. It's really old. It's not really used much anymore, but it is used in the yogic traditions. That's what a lot of the yogic words are, is Sanskrit words. So he studied Sanskrit, and he was also involved in more of that Eastern religion, which would be being vegetarian, not eating meat, drugs and alcohol.
No drugs and alcohol?
No, when you're in that kind of state, no drugs and alcohol, not eating meat, no, illicit sex, that kind of stuff. So So I was raised in this environment that was a little more pure like that, early on in life. So I had that kind of influence, and my dad was a psychiatrist. That goes deep into kind of like family, traumas, but like he wanted to heal his mom because his mom was an alcoholic. So we have that kind of in our family too. So that's why he also abstained from, the drugs and alcohol and went into that kind of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. But so then he became a psychiatrist. And so then my dad was really passionate about healing people and working with the homeless people. So the tattoo basically means where love and charity is, God is. And it's written in his handwriting. I took it from a note that he wrote to me. So that's also kind of what I believe in as well. Where love and charity is, God is. So when we have those actions, when we do those actions in our life, then that's where the spirit is, and that's God is whatever you want God to be. But I believe it is like a higher power, that essence of spirit, and humanity and giving is there. That's the most powerful thing, is when we can act in those ways. So that's what was so important to me.
Yeah. I had an experience in El Salvador where I stayed with a family. It was an immersive experience where I was staying with a family in the mountains of El Salvador that had next to nothing. And the leader of the trip was saying that you find God on the margins, and their ability to love life in a way that you've never seen from someone who has it all, or what it seems like it all. And I can definitely resonate with finding God and glimpses of God on the margins, and that's super fascinating. Well, there's been a lot. We've covered a lot, Kamalika. Yeah. This has been so much fun. I appreciate you coming on. I hope that people are able to hear your story and grow from it, or maybe take that next step if they're going through a tough time. Or, maybe take that next step and try out some cold exposure or breath work. From my experience, I try to do a cold shower every morning, or if I'm feeling off, I try to do a cold shower. I did it right before this podcast. It gets me primed, and honestly, it makes me happy. There's really, you can do the scientific study yourself. Get in the cold and you're going to feel better after. In terms of the breath work, I recommend everybody gives it a try. If you're in the Cleveland area, definitely go to one of Kamalika's workshops. She will give her social media information at the end here, and I'll be sure to put it in the show notes. She runs incredible workshops that I myself have greatly benefited from. I've come with my friends, I've come by myself, either or. It's a great community. Don't be worried about showing up by yourself. It's loving, it's accepting, and it's definitely worth your while. It's one of those things that you can go there and take the lessons learned throughout the rest of your life. And I think that's what Kamalika has to offer, and that's why she's seen so much success with her clients. So, Kamalika, I appreciate you coming on. I'll give you the floor if you have any closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Luke, for asking me. And I do have a poem to read that
Most
my
definitely.
dad wrote.
Yes.
I gotta get that really quick.
Yeah. Don't be sorry.
Just remembered at the last minute, but so this is one of my favorite poems that my dad wrote, and I remember him reading it to me when I was a child, like maybe 9 or 10 years old, and I just felt so connected to it. It's called Water in the Creek. My mind is like the bedrock at the bottom of a creek. My thoughts, like water, flows swiftly over that changing surface, which is sometimes smooth and other times rough. There are waves of joy and sorrow and crests of brilliance and turmoil. There are murky, isolated places of confusion and loneliness. And oh God, the falls are so frightening. But in the lagoon where the water has pooled and is still, there's tranquility, there's clarity. In some places the sun warms the water and there is faith. And every now and then the light of the sun breaks through the dense foliage above and illuminates the water, causing it to shimmer and sparkle with hope.
Wow.
It always brings tears to my eyes. It's kind of sums up like what I think we were talking about with life, you know, the ups and downs, and that faith and that hope you have to keep holding on to no matter what. Don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens. And my contact information, I have a website, is www.chagrinriverholistic.com. So you can find all of my events on my website. And also you can check out the Wim Hof Method website and just search Cleveland. And then my profile will come up, and all of my Wim Hof workshops are on that site. And then I also do other things that you can look through my website on. I offer Reiki. I offer meditation classes. I offer this Shinrin Uku, which is basically nature therapy, bringing people out into nature and really getting them grounded and connected, and doing, you know, bathing, like water, ice bathing, and meditation and all that stuff. So yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that's me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's where you can find Kamalika, guys. Thank you for listening, and I'll have the description and all that, what she just said, in the show notes. So have a great day, everybody.